you know how great it is to have you here for the Greater Purpose Podcast.
What's up? Welcome to the Greater Purpose Podcast from the Cubs Room. What do you think of the Cubs Room, huh?
I'm surprised someone could, find the time to do this. But it's awesome that you did. Yeah.
It took me forever to do this room. No, it did take a little while. I don't know if I've ever told you. It took about 4 years to complete the Cubs Room. You guys are welcome to come see it. You don't have to be on the podcast to be in the Cubs Room. So anybody is welcome to come see the Cubs Room anytime you want. So just let me know, though. Don't show up with it unannounced. So, but before we get started here, make sure you go to the-greater-purpose.com. That'll get you to links to our YouTube channel. Go to the YouTube channel, or you're already there because you're watching this, but make sure you like, subscribe, and share. I've been told by my producer that I have to tell you all this kind of stuff. I don't think I told my producer, Stephen Wright, about today. So I don't think he knows about today. So the producer's chair is empty. As you see over there, the blue chair, that's the producer's chair. It's empty, but it's not his fault this time. It's my fault. So I do want to bring up one thing here. So the Greater Purpose of a Godly Man Men's Conference is coming up in April 27th. We want to make sure you know about that. There's a lot of information right there. You don't have to read that. But there's a QR. I don't know. Hey, I wonder if I can do that while they're watching YouTube.
I think you can.
Maybe. But again, go to thegreaterpurpose.com, the-greaterpurpose.com, and you can get the information on the men's conference. Some great speakers there. Door prizes, free food, guys, free food. We'll feed you. It's completely free, doesn't cost you a dime. Great inspirational speakers. Several of them have been on the podcast. One of them that's on the podcast right here is going to be one of our speakers there. So he's not going to share everything, though. He's going to save stuff you'll have to come to the conference for, right?
Yep,
he's not going to give all that ahead of time. So here we go. My guest today is Zechary Singh. So glad to have you here, my friend. So real quick, I know who you are, but tell everybody in the podcast world who you are.
Yeah, my name is Zechary Singh. I'm an implant from California. I don't think I brought all that over, though.
Transplant.
Transplant.
Great. That was good. Implant. I hadn't heard that one before. Well, you're implanted. You're implanted.
Transplant from California. Just came out to Charlotte for some work, and I ended up kind of staying here. Fell in love.
Glad you did.
Some of you guys know. So
we're glad you fell in love too.
Yep. And I was praying for God to give me a church too, as I came to Charlotte for a temporary work and for 6 months, and it turned out to be something. Where it's my current living situation.
Right. Cool. And a newlywed.
Oh newlywed as well. So I mean, it was crazy last year. I'm sure I'll dive a little bit into it. A little bit. So
cool deal. All right. So we'll jump right into the questions and all that good stuff. So when did you first recognize the importance of becoming a godly man?
That's a deep question. First of all,
and it's supposed to be. By the way, we know we're not there. We know we're on the walk. Mm-hmm. None of us are where we're supposed to be. We get that. But there comes a point in time, and sometimes it's a progression, when a guy says, okay, I need to be walking a godly walk. Okay. And I know I see that in you. So when did that hit you?
So I think it was when I dove back into pursuing Christ after COVID, or I guess during COVID. And I noticed where the world was heading and how there are basically this classification of men, maybe we can say evil. There's a lukewarm, I'd say, and then those who are, I'm not going to say perfect again, because that's never the case, but pursuing God and continuously trying to refine, sanctify themselves daily, essentially, right? So I think you're never going to be perfect, but it's the pursuit of it, right? So I think I realized there's a difference in men who choose to go that way, and I think the world needs that right now, especially.
Cool deal. Nice. So who's been your biggest inspiration so you had that inspiration before, maybe not then you realized a greater inspiration later on. So who's been your biggest inspiration?
My biggest inspiration, when it comes to faith?
Yeah.
I'm going to say my biggest inspiration was probably my dad. Just someone, when I was born into the church. Of course, I'll probably dive into that a little bit here, but I wasn't like fully pursuing God on my own as a child, right?
Yeah, right.
I was just going to church almost, for me, it was a routine thing, right? And then I'll dive into a little bit of that, but he always just kept me planted in church. It was known to be there Sunday. And that was, I guess, a root of my faith, understanding that God has to be a part of that lifestyle.
Sure.
And when
tell us your dad's name so everybody knows.
My dad's Damien Singh.
There you go. Your inspiration. Absolutely.
Cool. And so he, when it came to any difficult things that I dealt with as I was growing up until 18, he'd always kind of lead me kind of that way. Nice. Prayer. Right. He'd kind of tell me, "Hey, go get some prayer. Let's go get some prayer."
Oh, cool. There you go. I like that.
That's the pastor would do that for us. So
nice. Yeah. Cool. All right. Good. So, so you knew you needed to be a godly man. You had a godly inspiration. Mm-hmm. What do you think right now, being kind of newly turned around here in the last couple of years, like you just said, how do you think you are or you're going to be most effective at affecting other men's lives, younger men, older men, boys, at helping them understand that they need to become godly men? Yeah,
I can kind of relate that right now to my current situation, and I found myself helping other people or other men by simply sharing my testimony. There you go. Sometimes I think we need a balance of Christians who have been lost in the world. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not saying we're forced to go that route.
That was me.
But we end up that way.
I wasn't a Christian lost in the world. I was an atheist lost in the world.
Atheist lost in the world.
Yeah. So.
And I think, and I'm not saying that God takes us on that route, but that's our choice. Right. But if we have that route, we know where we can go back to, and it draws us back slowly. And then that testimony does become empowering for people who are in that same situation. So that's simply my testimony, talking to people and being just kind of real with people in that sense.
And you are, and I like that about you. So empowering, I like that. Empowering. Our testimony is empowering. So, but yeah, so the walk that we that's what I try to tell people. There's been guys through here that have had the silver spoon their whole lives. They have a testimony.
Yeah.
There's been guys who've had a little bit of rough patches here and there. They have a testimony. Yeah. There's been guys like me. I was an atheist till I was 26.
Yeah.
We have a testimony. There's all different. Yeah. So, don't doubt your testimony, guys. You have a testimony. Your testimony will apply to certain people that my testimony will not. So, and just like Zach's here. Cool. Yep. All right. Very good. So, and he is involved in our men's ministry. He's helping out with the ushering. He's getting involved in our men's conference and all that kind of stuff. So he's stepping up and stepping out and applying what God's doing in your life to other men, and you're going to impact even more men. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
So there you go. Cool. So all right. So now I sent you some topics, and I can't remember which you picked, and you can mix and match, or you may have picked one set of topics. So I explained this to people. We used to call it the Fast Five. It's not the Fast Five anymore. You can elaborate as much as you want to. Okay. So I made Chris White go through it like this.
Yeah.
He had more. So we're going to bring him back so he can elaborate. But we're going to let you elaborate. So tell me, give us, you have to choose from 5 men who've inspired you, 5 women who've inspired you, 5 favorite heroes of the faith. They can be from the Bible, or they can be current or recent, or 5 Bible favorites, which would be books, Psalms, Proverbs, Old Testament, New Testament. So which way are you going with that one?
Yeah, so I picked 5 Bible faves, not because I'm a Bible expert, but because I just thought it could like kind of hone me back into it, and I more so wanted to share just, like I said, I don't think people come here probably to get biblical, specifically biblical.
Actually, they do.
Some do, but for me, I think it's more so like listening to people from different experiences, different walks of life. So I kind of wanted to share that more so.
Nice.
It did make me obviously dive into, the favorite book here as well.
That's perfect.
So I kind of just like related here. That's the topic I picked, and I guess that I'll kind of start off with that.
All right.
Dive on your cue. So I wanted to pick Hebrews. Why? Because I specifically got recalled to that moment where I was talking about earlier, where born in the church, born and raised in church, but again, maybe my heart wasn't fully in it at the time, right? But I remember but it's still, I'd say it gave you a good moral code, and I think that's very important in today's world. And so I definitely had that, and I think when I was 18, starting college, that's where I think a few years college kind of started. First 2 years seemed kind of normal, but I think as COVID kind of happened, college, you start getting a little bit lost along the track. That's where I think, as you're a man and you're given the world essentially at your disposal, right? That's where you really start making those choices. And college obviously kind of invokes that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's, you either get, when the options are presented, are you going to go deeper into it, or are you going to try to, root yourself out or pursue God, I guess, right? That's pursuing world, and it's a very pivotal time, I think, in any man's life.
I like that. World or God.
Right. Yeah. And,
it's either up or down. There's no in between.
Yeah. And I think as with COVID happened, the truth is there was isolation, right? And the enemy will use that, or the Lord will use that, right? Or depending on how you choose to view that time. Sure. And I had actually got lost, and that's part of my testimony that I'm not going to share in here, but probably a little bit into at the men's conference. But essentially, I had got thrown back into the world deeply. And I think I found myself, it was a random, I had to go get a haircut basically. And I ended up finding someone who was at the church, went to church, ended up finding myself back with God essentially during those 2 years. And that was, I think 2021, to like 2023, basically, up until I came here. So I was at the church, and Hebrews was one of the books that I kind of found myself grounded in a lot of the times, because now talking about the book a little bit, and I'd love to get your expertise on this as well as I'm reading here.
I'm not an expert.
But I think it's like a great basis for faith. Many times, and in today's world, a lot of churches have the grace, what we say, grace, faith, like
hyper grace,
grace, right? And that's where you're getting these worldly churches that have no conviction for like God's actual world. That might cause also like the LGBTQ churches that probably spawned that up, where we think that everything's just simply
churches that don't want to admit there's an angry God sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Right, and I think that's a great point. And Sean we talk about it too sometimes. Yeah. We do forget the Old Testament, and everything God said there was valid, and we can't forget God's wrath, and it is there.
He came to fulfill it. He didn't come to do away with it, or shut it down, or disassociate us from it. So absolutely.
And I think Hebrews does this great way of kind of like bringing that all together full circle, where we do understand the importance of the New Testament and God, and His ultimate sacrifice, but it also, for me, reminds us what was there before.
Heritage.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's important, because we were talking about this just the other day as well. But when you have people who get saved by, let's say, the New Testament, right, by Jesus, that's, I'd say, what happens, right? When people come in, that's what we're showing them.
Right.
But then to continue a convicted life, it takes you understanding that there's the Old Testament.
Right.
Because then you have fear and reverence for God. Yeah. If there is no understanding of what happened prior, then you live this life almost with no boundaries, thinking that anything you do is going to be, I think that's where you get into an irreparable mindset, right?
Oh, wow.
So I think that's
the old God is my buddy.
God is my buddy. I'm going to do everything and get away with it. And I think that to me, understanding that and having those conversations with people who say, "Hey, don't forget the the Old Testament, the whole Bible, right?" Yeah. Where I'm gonna be honest, just how terrible human beings were in our carnal nature if we were just given to ourselves in our flesh, right?
We are. Yeah.
So that, to me, Hebrews does a good job of kind of like bringing those two together, at least for me.
Right.
And I'm sure other people have different interpretations of it.
No, Hebrews has been mentioned multiple times here. So, absolutely. Good tie-in. So, cool. All right, good. So, so that's one. What else you got?
So, my favorite Psalm, and for my favorite Psalm, I want to skip here to page 873. So 873, it's Psalms 37, verses 23. So it's, "The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand." Mm-hmm. So again, I think this is coming back to what I talked about earlier here. It's important for us, even though a lot of us get saved by Jesus, to remember our faith is grounded not in, I guess, to not forget the word that comes before that, right? Mm-hmm. The Old Testament, because with this, it's important to understand as a Christian, we will fall many times, right? We'll never be perfect. We'll always, that sinful nature will always be there. And it's a continued refinement we go through every day. However, I bring back the Old Testament because now we don't want to be falling into sin and say, "Oh, God will pick me back up," right? And that's
intentionally.
Right? because then this word says, though he may stumble, he will not fall, right? Well,
stumble indicates not intentional necessarily. Anyway. So stumble would be, like you said, not intentionally falling into sin.
Yeah.
But
a good point. Yeah.
Unintentionally, accidentally, mistakenly, or oopsie kind of thing. Yeah. So we did sin. We did the wrong things. We didn't just jump into it. We're not intentionally doing those bad things. So we stumble, we fall. He picks us back up.
He picks back up. Yeah. And I think that's been also like
kind of what you said.
My journey too. As I found myself coming back with God, is like I stumbled many times, and it's continuously picking yourself back up, getting your knees on the floor to me, repenting, and being like, sincere about it. And like I said, you can't say words with God, like He knows your heart simply, right? And you can't deceive Him with that. And what's strange to me is, and I'm going to say this, I don't feel I'm worthy of half the amount of blessings that I've received these past few years, truly, because I've just seen, as I found myself back with the Lord, He's helped me with my career, my marriage, my housing, just every little single thing I can imagine.
Yeah. We're not worthy, but we need to expect them because He says He will bless us.
Yeah.
So it's kind of we were talking about the fine line.
It's a balance. It's this balance. I think that's what we talk about. And that's why everything.
You're not doing it to get the blessing, but God's going to bless you. So do what He says.
Yep.
I mean, kind of weird that way.
Yeah. And I think that's
so we're going to ask Him all that when we get there. Why did you do it this way? Why didn't you just know? But
yeah. And I think that's what the entire Bible did. Like, I think I heard this the other day. There's a balance between all of the word, essentially, right? Yeah. So
the intricacies of a relationship with Christ are deeper and more profound than what anybody knows when they first get saved, but eventually, hopefully you get to a point where you realize how intricate it is. So very intertwined. So cool. All right. So now your favorite proverb.
Yeah. So Proverbs 3 verses 5-6. So trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight.
Oh, wait a minute. Submit to God?
Yeah, right.
Go ahead. I'm sure you're going to go off on that a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think you understand.
Hyper Grace churches don't believe
Hyper Grace church don't believe it. So go do your own thing, and then
submit to man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Submit to
your feelings.
Your flesh, your feelings.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that?
Exactly. So again, kind of relating on my journey back here with God, I've had opportunities to also speak at I was talking earlier at another conference that I had to do a few years back. And this is the stuff where I'm like, God, I don't know personally anything, right? I'm a child in Christ and I'm trying to learn so much, but still it's like every time in this journey, whether it be Christ, right, in the past few years before I got to Charlotte here, I think I learned it's scary partially when you try to find yourself back with the Lord and He asks you to do sometimes things you're like, I don't know. I was like, why are you picking me type thing, right? Like, what about me?
Yeah. I get it. I know the feeling.
And I've found genuinely along the way, and I've told this to the people that we were talking about earlier, how have I inspired, or what's my most effective way or in motivating building other men's lives? It's telling my testimony, right?
Yeah.
And I'd say a part that I shared to a lot of people is submission.
Yeah.
I literally just I was on the phone with someone yesterday and I talked to him about submission.
Yeah.
And I said, learn to submit. Every single trial you may go through or every situation you come to, decisions you have to make that are, integral to your lives, right? Submission has always been key to me. And I think that happened before I came to Charlotte, I had opportunities. Let's use an example here, real life.
Okay.
Before I came to Charlotte, I had a job. I was at this job. I was doing great at this company. And as soon as I got this job offer to come here to Charlotte, I presented it to my old bosses and they said, "Oh, we want you to stay," actually. And they offered me basically I think it was, I'll say 30% on top of my base. So,
wow.
And I was an industry professional, I guess you could say at the time. So it was very attractive.
Sure.
They called me into one of the big bosses. So all this stuff, and it was like, oh, I wanted to be super diving into my career.
Yeah.
I wanted to dive into my career, and I thought, this is it right here. And what should I go to Charlotte? Should I stay? And I remember that entire weeks leading up to that was just submitting to God, praying and asking, right? And then I felt convicted to come here. And I guess inevitably you can see with this past year as I get the job, you know, all the blessings that came our way, meeting the love of my life, right?
There you go. So God blessed you for your submission.
Yeah.
For submitting the way you wanted.
And I'll say it's parts like this where integral decisions like that, where you need to have faith in God, because it's very scary, right? I could have stayed. That would have been very comfortable doing what I was doing, but it took a lot of like strength that I didn't have myself, and I resorted to God, and He gave me the strength for it. And I think that also played out. I guess I'll dive in. I don't want to touch on that piece. I'm gonna dive into that piece later, but I'm gonna share a little bit more on that piece about waiting. So, that's that.
Submitting, So submitting, good. All right. So yeah, and not to your own understanding. That's important because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
We talked about that before the podcast. There are a ton of things that don't make sense. Why they happen the way they happen. But you submitted, and God just kind of did what He did. That's pretty crazy. It's amazing. So, So all right. So how about an Old Testament verse?
Yep, Old Testament verse. So this is exactly, we're gonna touch back to Proverbs here now. So I'm going to go to Isaiah 40:28. All right, I'll start off at 28. So it's going to, do you not know, have you not heard? So the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and His understanding no one can fathom. This is the highlight here, is He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. And it continues, even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. And it continues to say, they will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. So a little bit of an excerpt there, but this is the part I guess I kind of wanted to touch on. So again, coming on submission, waiting on the Lord, trusting Him, and all this. I guess to kind of backtrack to that point there, that pivotal moment where I had to make that job change, right? I had came to Charlotte, right, and again, I was really planted in my last church, and that's where I was like, God, what is this? Why I'm so planted here? I'm comfortable, right? And that's the key word there, right? I'm comfortable.
Yeah. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Done that before.
So you get comfortable, and again, He wants you to grow in your faith, and He's got more in store for us. So as I made the move to Charlotte, I prayed, God, open the door for a new church. I had all this back there. How are you going to do it? And so I actually picked out churches that were part of that old church, and they were spread out. But somehow along the way, basically, and to dive into it, I guess that's where I met kind of my current wife, basically. And through that, the door for the church opened up as well. And I found myself loving South, and it's exactly
huge door open.
Yeah, and it's almost
what I've seen, because I know him, and we've had lots of discussions. I don't think we've had this discussion. And seeing knowing what you just said, and seeing what God has done in your life, just in the time that I've known you, is just amazing.
Yeah.
That is great. I mean, it's amazing anyway.
Yeah.
Isolated by itself, it's amazing. But from what you had to make a decision about to where you are now is really that's awesome. That's great. Yeah.
And to dive into that, it's the door opened up, I guess, to start off in a little bit of an order of what happened this past year, right? I met her, and the door opened up for the church, and
her is Victoria.
And we kind of just continued down this path, right? Of everything's going well on that stage.
And you got by Sean. You made it by Sean and Sarah. So that is an accomplishment right there.
They're amazing. They're amazing.
They are.
Truly.
They are. They're
great parents. You see it in the fruit with their own kids, anyway.
Absolutely.
So, that as that's happening on that front, I was supposed to return back to Los Angeles after the 6 months of working within banking, right? It was a training program, Supposed to take that, go back home.
Yeah.
The thing about this program, though, and again, this is where I want to bring in the reality of us as men. We have professional lives and all that, and what God can do also on that front. But this program would have basically opened up anybody who's been in that program basically for 20 years is bound to almost become an executive or leader in the company, right? Because they like to take this talent and almost like hand breed them a little bit and make sure they're kind of following the path. So this is everything I wanted. And the same job opportunity, however, the same exact training opened up. And so it's for 2023, right?
Yeah.
I applied to that same job 3 years ago.
Wow.
But guess what? Had I came here 3 years ago, I'd be a whole different guy.
Path. Wow.
I wouldn't have probably wouldn't have met her with the man I was then,
not.
right? I would have been completely lost. I would have probably got deeper into the world, right? If you take a kid like that, put him in a new city.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have
great.
I applied to that job 3 years ago.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool. Very nice.
You can take it and bring it later.
Absolutely.
So everything's going well, and I knew this time was coming up, June, July, where I had to go back to LA, and this is like the integral decision. Do I stay there and continue my career there? You know, there's...
I remember all this, by the way. I remember all this, guys. We went through this thing here with him.
There's a great church here. I got Victoria. That's when the decision had to be made, and I remember there was this decision, again, with the job now. Do I go back? Do I stay? The job market was very rough in that industry, so you didn't know when you could get a job.
Yeah.
Right? I think, that's when the banks crashed. So Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic. So the banking industry, again, is getting hammered. So I had this opportunity to do a job with someone that was in the church, offered me this job. Could have took it. However, it's like construction related, right? Yeah. So I was like, it's a job to just get by and stay here. But I was like, I could have got a job inevitably in 2-3 months of applying. Like it would have came eventually, but timing wise or whether that's what he wanted, I didn't know. So leaving here was when I was having the most struggle. I was in my apartment. I had an entire apartment. I didn't even end my technically like lease at that point. It was about 3-4 days before it, and nothing's packed in the apartment because I'm like, God, please open the door. I have interviews leading up to this, and I'm taking interviews. Nothing's like making any promise. I remember, and I want to hold to this little placeholder here, but Pastor had done a sermon that week about basically being obedient when God tells you to do something. When God tells you or puts this action in your heart, right? Chose to fast. Well, maybe 2-3 weeks before, I chose to fast one morning, and I was at work, and I was like, I don't know. And I applied to this one random job. I was like, I don't know if this will come out, right? Applied to that job, and we'll remember this. But that morning, I recalled Pastor Sermon, be obedient. So I was like, all right, cool, I'll apply to it. And even though I was having no luck, so anyways, fast forward, a week before I have to leave Charlotte, I'm basically, on my knees, praying to God in the apartment. Open the door. The opportunity was there for me to take a job here, working construction related job. And this is where the easier decision for me, for Zachary, would have been to stay here and take that job. Yeah. However, that decision was not giving me peace. Mm-hmm. The harder decision that was giving me peace was to go back to LA. Yeah. Right? But here's the thing. I didn't want that, and every part of me didn't want to do that. I was, I was crying. As a man, I was crying like a lot during that week.
I didn't see you cry, but I do remember you.
Yeah, that was in private.
Pray. I remember that. Yeah.
It was in private, and a lot of people prayed for me, and going to the Tuesday prayer night, and nothing really like panned out, right? But
we prayed for God's will.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what He did.
Yeah, and so really, the decision that came out of it is I knew I had to be obedient, because if I didn't, something was going to go even worse and even harder, right? Yep. But the harder decision, and this is where you say, be obedient to Him, let Him lead your path. It comes all to fruition with all the other verses I was talking about here. But I ended up going back to LA again. It was hard for me. I realized I don't want to do all this. So I knew my first deal was to basically go back. Now, here's the thing. During that time there, again, I'm at this decision. Do I leave Wells Fargo? God, are you going to open anything better for me, right? Yeah. I can't go to Charlotte. The management told me I can't go back. I have to stay in Charlotte for like 2-3 years. I didn't want to do that, right? Or I have to stay in LA for 2-3 years before I could even choose to move. So I'm applying to a bunch of jobs. The job that I applied to 2-3 weeks ago, that week that Pastor prayed about being obedient, that's the one that took root. And I had to like 2-3 interviews basically thereafter. And this job basically ended up opening the door for me to come back here. And it was about 6 weeks from me being back in LA. And it's funny because I thought at that time, again, that nothing would be better than the Wells Fargo job, right?
Yeah.
However, this job I found at this new bank was actually much better. I was just about a few months ago. Again, this is just a real quick little, I don't know if it's show off moment, but you know, I'm
bragging on God.
This is bragging on God, right? Yeah, but it's like, I thought that job would have made me like, you know, up here in 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. I had lunch with their head of like corporate banking, basically. So they report just 2-3 underneath the CEO. Yeah. She reports to the next CEO of the company, basically. Yeah. So and I had a personal lunch with her and 3 other people, me and 2 other people so we're having this private dinner with her basically a few months ago in Minneapolis when I was there. So, and I remember reflecting on that moment. I'm like, you know, as those moments you're like, look at God. You're like, wow, you thought that company could do it, or your ways could do it. Look at what happens when you submit to God and His ways, right? And the amount of exposure you get. The company's grown largely here in Charlotte. So this is where it all comes back to fruition, essentially. And you look back in that moment, how much you like wept in that moment during that trial. You wanted to go your way, but you trusted God. Though it's His decision, I think, gives you peace, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's uncomfortable because He challenges you, and you're stretching this muscle of faith.
Peace doesn't mean no turmoil.
Yeah, good. That's true. You know, that's true.
So we think that sometimes. So, and I want to recognize this for people out there that may be having difficulty with their faith. His faith is what helped him make the hard decision, very difficult decision, and your faith to make that decision knowing that God had a better plan than what your plan was is what carried you through that. So that's very amazing. That's cool.
That's true. And I'll say to this last closing statement here as well regarding that testimony. That time away made me realize like my love, I guess, for this woman as well. And that also probably accelerated my time to get married, essentially, right? Because otherwise it would have been, my thing was always, I want to wait 2 years plus, right? Get to know someone, you know, that's what the world says, right? But in God's way, you're just like, how did this happen in 1 year? You move to a new place, you get new jobs, you know, you get married, like it's just, and you look back in the year and like, that's,
if it had been easy for you to be away, then you would have known. Yeah. It's easy to be away from that person that God sent you, then you would have known, okay, maybe not.
Exactly.
But the difficulty and struggling through the difficulty and Him carrying you through that difficulty. Part of your progression.
Exactly.
That's cool. What a great start, man. That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, we could just end it right there, but we're not done. We got more. That was really good though. Yep. So New Testament verse, and that'll be the end of that part.
All right. Yeah. So I just want to do a tithing. So I wanted a page. I'm going to go to.
Oh, good. We're going to go to tithing. I love it. I told Pastor Adrian, let me do something on tithing sometime. He was, I don't remember what it was, but he was not upset, but he was disgruntled about something. We'll just say disgruntled. That's the best word I can think of. And I was like, dude. I did not call my pastor dude. Sorry. But I mean, like, let me do something on tithing because I can nail it.
All right, so going to 2 Corinthians 9.
So I'm excited about this one,
2 Corinthians 9, 6 through 15.
Okay.
So generosity and courage. So remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to bless you abundantly so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work.
Amen. There you go.
And you can continue to read that as well if you'd like. But
sure, it expands even.
And I think I wanted to touch on that because tithing, again, I think we've talked about this a little bit, the importance of it. I'll say this here, this quick little story too. I know we're coming up on time here.
You're good.
When I just got my car, I was 18. Again, this is when I'm still trying to just continue to go to church a little bit. My dad was out of town. We had our car, me and my twin, right? And that week I did not have to go to church, and I had a bill basically for school. Now, of course, I could reach to my brother and my parents, and I knew they'd give me the money in a heartbeat, right? But this is about me trying to learn my own ways to be a man in my ways in this way. So dad was out of town. I could have made the excuse, I don't want to go to church, right? I needed this certain amount of money. Let's say, I don't remember the exact figures right now, but let's say I was about $40 short or something to pay it. So I'm like, I need to hold on to everything I have to be able to pay this school bill off, right, for college. However, I had to pay, I think, like $20 to $30 at the time I was working at Popeyes. And so it's like, do I tithe? Do I hold on to exactly what I need? So here's the thing. I went to church that week, just me and my brother again, taking our own initiative to go to church at this age, right? We go there, go to church. I give my $20, $30 basically for tithe that week. And as I'm leaving the church, this guy walks up to us. He's a family friend, basically business owner. Walks up to us and he's like, "Hey, where's your dad?" And I was like, "Oh, he's out in town." He's like, "Oh, okay." He opens his wallet.
No way. Yeah.
He gives me and my brother, and mind you, I'm 18 years old. Do you want to know how much he gives me? He hands an 18-year-old $100 each.
Wow,
each.
That's cool.
And I don't know about you, but the last time I received money before that was maybe like 14, 15. No one gives an 18-year-old $100, let alone two of them, right?
All right.
So he gives that.
Wow.
So that's how God uses someone else, by the way. But in that moment, right, I learned I gave him, knowing I wasn't going to have enough for this. And God came and just brought in $100.
That's awesome.
And that was a very pivotal moment. And other times too, where I left, ended a job because I needed to focus on school. Again, I had 10 checks. I think they're all like for $600 or $300 a piece. Anyways, so I'm trying to ride this out for like 6 months as a college student. I'm coming down, applying since 10 checks, 9 checks. I'm going down the checks, right? And I'm coming down to my last check. And then guess what? As I get to that one check, again, the door opens up and I get a new job right as I'm coming down to that last check, right? And again, it happens continuously. And here's the thing too. As I was working at Popeyes, it was a certain amount of tithe he had me do, right? Yeah. Now that tithe is basically 10 times the amount, right? Yeah. And and I don't say this again because I think finances, tithe is also a muscle that we need to stretch as well. Right. It's another aspect of faith because truthfully, it's how do you build a kingdom? Let's be realistic. It's through funds, right? Yeah. And I think just as the world also today to cut into like the media and all, I guess the entertainment world, all that, the enemy has his own people too, right? Pawns, I guess, in the world of entertainment, media, all that stuff. Well, God also has his people, and he also has soldiers too, who have businesses, who are successful people. So I also think that is important that you understand there's a balance to it all. So I think again, I've only seen that. Go ahead.
So tithing is a commitment to your faith in Jesus. I mean, that it's just the way it is. It's in the Bible. It's not just in the scripture that you pointed out. It's throughout the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament. It's a commit. Now, having said that, like you said, it does say give as all right, so you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly. So that part's between you and God. This is. I'm not a theologian. This is my biblical understanding, though. That part's between you and God, because I won't give my testimony here, but that's what God did with me. Yeah. So does that mean it's 10%? Maybe not for you. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's starting out smaller.
I agree.
And a lot of preachers preach that. Start somewhere.
Yep.
Bring $1 a week. Yeah. Do something. But give to God's work. And then somewhere down the road, what I'm going to tell you, just by his testimony right here, God will change that. And what happens in your heart is where you're holding on to that financial need that you think you have, and it can't be met any other way. God will take that and release it so that the tithe becomes it's no longer a stretch. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean he won't stretch you sometimes. Yep. But it's no longer a question of, do I tithe this week? Yeah. What it becomes is, of course I tithe. Yeah. The question is, do I tithe more this week? Yeah. Do I tithe more and give extra offerings this week? Yeah. and which offerings do I give? That's what it becomes. It's not even a question of whether or not you will.
Yep.
It's a command that you're going to. But God does that. God changes that for you, and He does that for you. That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I like. Is that anything else on that?
No, and I said
cool.
It's another muscle, and I think it's just like that. It'll go just like this until He's continuously stretching you and helping you grow in that area as well.
So that was for Pastor Adrian right there. All of you out there who aren't tithing. So there you go. So we're making you feel guilty. We do that once in a while. Sometimes we step on toes. Sometimes it's my toes.
But you're right. Sometimes it could be just $1. And
want you to absolutely. He wants you to understand giving to Him, not because He needs it, but because it's for you. It's your growth, not His. Listen, He's going to get the $10 from somebody. The $10 will come in for the church from somewhere, somehow, some way. God will make sure that that happens. He can do that.
Yeah.
But He wants you to understand the importance of giving to His work, His ministry, and what's going on with His glory. It's His glory. So it all glorifies Him. Cool. All right. So that was the deep stuff. We did some deep stuff there, deep diving. Now we do the funny, interesting, crazy stuff. But before you do that, you have to get your parting gifts. I don't know if you know this or not, but you get parting gifts. See? That means you didn't watch the entire podcast. That's okay. I like to get, it's okay. I don't expect everybody to watch every single podcast or anything. So you get parting gifts. So your first parting gift is a bottle of Mr. Bill's STEM Education. Why is that so funny, Zach? So Mr. Bill's and Bill Worth, that is a shameless plug for my businesses, but it's also a gift for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, I know you will use it wisely.
I'll put it on my desk. Don't worry.
There you go. And you also will receive, I will autograph this, you will receive an autographed Willie Ace, yes, that's me, on a Chicago Cubs baseball card. Yeah, I know. And I will autograph that. I will number it. I think you're number 49.
Okay.
I think you're on 49 podcast. 49, so I will autograph that and number it before you leave.
Awesome.
And the most important thing is you get to choose a Lego superhero. Let me show you mine. Mine is Iron Man.
This is cool.
Lego superhero. And you say, why a Lego superhero?
Why a Lego superhero?
Okay. And the reason is because, first of all, it's a tie-in to STEM, science, technology, engineering. Engineering, because you have to build your Lego superhero like I did.
That's true.
So engineering. But we also believe that the men who come through here in God's eyes are superheroes. So we want to recognize them with a So now, the problem is, when I ordered this box, they sent me some really weird ones this time. So I've got some in here. I'll be honest, I don't even know who they are. Now I do.
Deadpool, probably.
No, that's not Deadpool. Yeah, I got him out of there. I think I threw him out. No, that's Hugh Jackman, the guy that Hugh Jackman. What's his name?
Wolverine.
Wolverine. That's it. That's Wolverine.
That's cool.
Oh gosh. Oh look.
Is that Indiana Jones?
That's from no. That's he's from Guardians of the Galaxy. The raccoon.
Oh, the raccoon.
Yeah, the raccoon.
Rocket.
Yeah, Rocky. Yeah.
Rocket.
I don't know. Rocket. Okay. Yeah, and I don't know who
that looks like a Star Wars character.
It could be.
I don't know.
And there's that's Spider-Man. That's a Spider-Man, I think. No, wait, that might be Deadpool.
That's Captain America.
What is that? That's a horse. I don't know what that is. I don't know where I got these from. I'm not ordering from these people again. I don't even know what these things are. Who's it? Cool. Oh, now that's also from X-Men, right?
The yellow one.
I don't know. So maybe we'll find one you know. Now he's from Captain America, but that's not Captain America.
Captain. Yeah, that's Captain America. That guy.
There's Vision. I know that one. I don't know that one. Oh wait, that's Groot. Oh, you can't have Groot. You can't have Groot. I got to give that. I got to give that to my executive producer, my wife. There's Mrs. Iron Man.
Yeah.
And there's
who's this guy?
Now this is also from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
Gamora. I think it's Gamora, right? That might be. That's him. That's really long hair. I don't know what.
I think kind of like this Captain America.
I know, that's easy, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
One, right?
That's cool.
But I have a Groot. I didn't know we had a Groot. My wife is a big.
Thank you.
Groot
I appreciate
fan.
that.
Yeah. So that's it.
I'll
so
make it.
Now you get to give us to wrap it up for the fun part, since we're in the Cubs room, your sports. You got a sports story for us.
I think the most memorable thing, I was thinking about it, like I don't watch.
It doesn't have to be inspirational. It can be funny, but it's okay.
But the coolest thing to me was 2009, 2010 Lakers.
Oh, okay.
So
basketball fan.
Yeah, I was a basketball. I grew up, and I basically saw those championship games back to back.
Oh wow, okay.
Years, I think they were making it to the conference finals, and they won 2 finals back to back. I think 9 and 10. That was Lamar Odom, Derek Fisher, Pau Gasol, Metta World Peace, Kobe obviously, and so I think that was the most memorable time. I remember. But the terrible thing, I think riots started in LA because they win. They couldn't behave, I guess. I don't know, right?
LA and Chicago, when they win, they tear the place down.
They would never behave, honestly.
That's crazy.
But that was my most memorable time, just being a kid watching those
the basketball championships and watching the riots afterwards. Cool. All right, that's great. So, guys, thank you for being here. Remember, like, share, get the word out there. We got the conference coming up. Go to the webpage, all that kind of stuff. We appreciate you. We love you. We hope you have a blessed day. Thank you, Zach, for being here.
Thank you for your time.
God bless you, sir. And God bless you.